Hello, hello, hello. Are there people there? If there are, give me a shout out. Man, thanks for hanging in there, guys. I've had some major internet issues. The Wi-Fi wasn't working at all in my house, so we kind of finally got it semi-fixed. I'm plugged in right now, but yeah, I'm not going to be able to share video on this simply because of the connection speed. So we're going to be doing a slideshow presentation. It's probably better since my hair looks like crap anyway. But yeah, so our folks there, where are folks tuning in from? Hola, hola. Let's see, is this working? Are we working? Hopefully. Yeah, I was counting down to the hour and saw that the internet basically had completely cut out. And I said, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Okay, so I had to move into my husband's office where he has a hardwired line so that I could make it work. So we're gonna go ahead and get going. I'm gonna turn my screen share on and we'll go and look at the presentation. Dun, dun, dun. Is it this one? I think so. Alrighty, hopefully you are seeing slide 1 there. Are you seeing slide 1? Hopefully you're seeing slide 1. Let me see. I think that's actually the wrong one. Great. Oh boy, we're having such a fun. Oh, what a kickoff. Okay, we're gonna try that again. Trying that again. Turning screen share on. Okay, there we are. We are gonna get going. So thanks so much, guys, for being here. As I said, thanks again for hanging in there with the internet issues. So this presentation you're here today to watch is all about getting more done in less time, which is something that has been really a sort of keystone to my life over the last few years, in terms of not only a research project that I've gone down the rabbit hole with, but it's been something that has really transformed the way I work. And so we're going to be talking today about a system I use that allows you to essentially do more and get more and be more effective in less time. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So let me put this into play mode. I'm not sure why it's not happening either. Oh boy. Okay, there we go. Maybe is it working better now? Still a little bit kind of wonky looking, but okay, we'll go with that. So today's presentation is get more done in less time. 6 simple steps you can do right now to double your productivity and take back your time. And really, what we're going to be talking about is this whole idea of purposeful productivity. Productivity, not the way you sometimes read about it, where you have to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning and do all your best work in a flurry with some coffee over the next 3 hours and, not manage any of your other priorities in your life, but real productivity. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today. So first things first, I think one of the best things you can do for yourself right now is to turn off your phone, y'all. You've set aside this time, this hour and a half with the Q&A, and I want you to just give yourself this time and really invest in you in this moment. So turn off that phone, put the kids on airplane mode and just give yourself this time and space. And then if you stick around till the end, there's going to be a bonus. There's a pretty awesome sort of coupon code I'm going to be giving away at the end. So make sure you stick around to see what's up with that. So let's start with just some questions, and feel free to, answer in the chat box. I just got a message that some folks are saying maybe the chat box isn't working correctly, but hopefully we will fix that in the background, along with all the other things we have to fix for today's presentation. Yikes. Okay, so let me know, do you have more work than hours in the day? Let me know in the chat box. Are you working crazy hard but not moving the needle? Are you overwhelmed with how much is on your plate? This is a pretty common feeling these days. Is this you? Are you overwhelmed with how much is on your plate? Have you read books, listened to talks, or tried time management strategies that just don't work? If that's you, let me know. And if any of those things resonate with you, I just want to let you know that you're really in the right place if you want to get more done in less time. And you're definitely in the right place if you've tried everything else and you're still not sure where the hours in each day go. And you're certainly in the right place, again, if you want to make a change in how you spend your days. And I think this is really important. This idea of the desire to want to spend your days differently really has to be there in order for that change to really happen. You are also in the right place if you have some control over your calendar. You know, sometimes when I teach people my system, they say, well, does this work for everyone? And I say, you know, in reality, it works best if you are an entrepreneur or an owner, or if you are an employee, that you have some degree of flexibility and ownership over your time. You know, a classic job that might not be able to implement a lot of productivity strategies might be, you know, an ER doctor, an EMT, a nanny. These are really response-based professions, and it's harder to make these kind of strategies work in that scenario. But if you have some control over your calendar, you are in the right place. Now you may be saying, hey, but wait, Claire, but wait, you know, you don't know my life. Maybe I just said some things that resonated with you, but ultimately you're thinking, you don't really know my life. You don't really know how crazy busy things are. And maybe you're saying, Claire, busy is the new norm, right? Maybe you've had that experience where you go to the supermarket, you see someone you haven't seen in a while in aisle 3, and they maybe say to you, hey, Sally, how are you? And you respond back, busy. You know, I think this is becoming increasingly more and more common, this idea that when someone asks how we are, we answer busy. Busy really is the new norm. And if this is, you know, a statement that resonates with you, I just encourage you to start thinking that this is really a little bit of your kind of inertia talking, right? This idea that busy is the new norm is something that we've accepted, but it doesn't have to be that way. We really can make a change. So, you know, my question to you is, what is holding you back? Is it fear? What's holding you back from really making that change to find more time in your day to really better live your life? So let's get started by just giving you some of the background on me and how I got to this place of, you know, understanding what it means to really manage time and energy well, because my story of getting here was certainly a pretty bumpy road. And my story really, I would say, starts about a dozen years ago. This is a picture of me. I'm on the left, and that's Sammy on the right. Sammy would later become my foster son and come out to the U.S. and do high school over in the U.S. before heading off to college. This is a picture of us in Kenya running back in 2006. This was taken for Runner's World magazine. And, you know, at the time, basically, I had gone on this really dreamed of journey around the world for a couple years. And I was doing it because I had one of those crappy jobs that was really amazing because it paid my bills. I was working for an online editing company. It was super boring work, but it allowed me to really live the life I wanted at the time. And at the time, it was all about travel. And so at the end of one particular 9-month stint around the world, I went to the country of Kenya to climb a mountain. I was very athletic at the time. I say that with a laugh because now I am not. And I went to climb Mount Kenya with my best friend, Laura. And when we got there, you know, someone said, oh, if you're going to climb the mountain and you need a place to stay, you should stay at this guest house. It's near the base of the mountain, and it's free or nearly free. And, you know, at the time we did anything if it was free or nearly free. So we said, sure. We showed up at this guest house. It turned out that it was on the grounds of an orphanage, and there was also a church there. There were elders in the church who ran the orphanage and ran this guest house. And they invited us for lunch. I was a little bit nervous at first. I'd never really been in an orphanage, didn't really know what that would be like. And, you know, walked into that lunch and walked out of that lunch completely changed. It was in the middle of that lunch that I excused myself to use the restroom. I went to the back of the church to this, you know, small little bathroom, and I just had this overwhelming feeling when I looked in this old sort of scratchy, dirty mirror that my life was about to change. And I've never had such a powerful sort of experience feeling that calling before or since. And so I came out to the lunch. I told my best friend, Laura, I don't think I'm going to climb the mountain. I think I'm going to stay here for the week and see if maybe I should be staying here longer. And she said, okay, Claire, she didn't know what I was talking about. She went off to climb the mountain. And when she came back, I said, I want to stay here for the year. And she decided to stay with me. And when we decided to stay, we talked to the elders and, we said, what should we be doing with our time? We both had the crappy editing job at the time, the crappy but amazing editing job. We said, what should we be doing with our time? And they said, why don't you run with the kids? And, we laughed. They knew we were marathon runners at the time, and we knew that, but we also know these kids are, Kenyan kids with their fast twitch muscles. They're going to beat us any hour of the day. But, the elders said, you're here. So we started a running program, which turned into a small nonprofit organization. And all the while, sort of the growth of that nonprofit happened as the result of social media. So I was first blogging and then starting to tweet back when Twitter wasn't even a real thing. And ultimately, I became known for my use of social media as a nonprofit owner and someone who wanted to do good in the world. And so then it was after a stint at business school that I ended up joining the company. I ended up joining the company of Twitter and being there starting when it was really small. I spent about 5.5 years there. It was an incredible experience. And, what I found in sort of the highs and lows of my work there was that overwhelmingly, I was passionate about the work, and I was so passionate that I just couldn't stop. And that meant that I was leading up to a pretty intense burnout. I didn't know it at the time. This is a picture of me. I spent a year working with the Vatican to get Pope Benedict on Twitter, which is definitely the highlight of my career thus far. That's me standing next to a journalist from Mexico. And, it was shortly after this year I spent with the Vatican. I was sort of appearing everywhere. I was in all these print and TV broadcast media, and I was writing all these books. I think I published, 8 books in 7 years, and I was enjoying what I was doing, but I was getting super, super burnt out. And for me, it sort of all came to a head with this, when this was the homepage of yahoo.com on April 5th of 2014. It says, woman live tweets daughter's birth. That's me. I'm the woman, and that's my first child, Lucia. And, this experience of live tweeting my daughter's birth was honestly something that was fun for me at the time. But I think in the context of my larger story, it plays a role in sort of explaining burnout, right? And explaining what it can mean to be just completely overconnected. We had this fun experience on the one hand of, all these folks covered it. I had friends and family who saw that I went into labor simply because they turned on Good Morning America the next morning, because I gave birth 3 weeks early, so people weren't expecting it. Conan O'Brien saying a Twitter employee live tweeted the birth of her child, which explains why the doctor kept yelling push and send. The Mail Online Employee of the Year, pregnant Twitter worker live tweets 14-hour labor, including dramatic breakdown, and a husband who grew upset after he forgot his ukulele. All true. But overwhelmingly, this experience, while it was fun for me in the moment, I think really indicated something larger about my constant connectivity, the constant work, the constant travel, and what that had meant for me, and how it really highlighted that I wasn't doing my best work or doing it particularly well. And so all of this sort of preceded what I call sort of my crash, the big boom, overwhelmed moment that sort of took over my life and made me reevaluate things. And when I have sort of big moments and do big reevaluations, a lot of what I do is I dig into the research. And so that's exactly what I started doing. I said, how did I get here? And the first thing I started looking at was actually how much I was working, and looking at my work patterns over time. I could see, from 2009 to 2012, 2009, I was full-time. 2010, I was more than full-time. 2011, ramping it up. And 2012, just never stopping. And what was interesting about all this is that when you compared it to my income in those those years, you didn't see much of a difference. And during these years, I was an employee, and I also had a side hustle entrepreneur thing going on. And yet I was seeing that I was working so much more, but I certainly wasn't getting more money out of it. And more importantly, I was losing a lot of my life, I felt, as a result. So this became my obsession, to understand energy management, purposeful productivity, intentional productivity, time management, and to dig into it all and figure out a way to hack my work and my life to make it work for me long term. And so I developed a process, and over time I started implementing that process, and I saw some incredible results. I started to see my work hours dramatically decrease. This is over the period of about a year after I started implementing the strategies I'm going to talk about today. And this just revolutionized my life. And at the same time, this amazing thing was happening. This amazing thing was happening wherein I was not only feeling better about my life, feeling more excited and encouraged, but I was also seeing a lot of income growth in, the entrepreneurial side of my business, right? So the side where I controlled the money, I could see that, wow, putting in less time, working more effectively was making a huge difference. So, this is a picture of the way things look during the best of the days these days. This is a picture. I live on a lake in South America, in Argentina. And this is the neighbor's dog. This is a picture taken at, probably 5 or 6 a.m., a time when I am not up. We can talk about that later, why I'm not really in the morning person. And this picture to me really exemplifies everything good about finding more peace and space and time in one's life, right? And not every day looks this good and peaceful these days, but more often than not, they do look like this. And so, I'm a huge believer in this process I'm going to talk you through today, and in what it can really do for your life. Now, we're going to be talking about something called the Dualist Method. And the first time I really started talking about it was in this book I published a few years ago called Design Your Day, Be More Productive, Set Better Goals, and Live Life on Purpose. This was a book that has really been near and dear to my heart, simply because it has, I am convinced, I know from what I hear from people, really changed people's lives and changed people's ideas of what it means to work and to do good work. So it was, after publishing this book that I said, hey, what else can I do? And last year I ran the Work by Design Summit. It was an online summit. More than 15,000 people attended. We had 45 speakers, and there was just one goal: to really change the way you work, to let people see that there is a better way. There's a way to do better work that doesn't require being on a hamster wheel and banging your head against a wall and becoming crazy busy all the time. The Work by Design Summit was really well received. These are some of the things people said about it. Work by Design Summit has changed my life and my thinking in so many ways. I will listen to those audios forever, I think. Thank you so much for this wonderful summit. There are so many great ideas that I hope to implement into my own life. I'm going through a defining moment in my life, and the summit is helping a lot. These talks about purpose are just what I need to hear right now. Thank you for this inspiring, encouraging event. And this one, I think I should just tattoo on my forehead. You're a master of time management. I would love to learn more from you. And so, in response to that, I created Work by Design School, which is the signature online purposeful productivity course we'll talk about a little bit more later in the presentation. But, now let's just dig into the Dualist Method and what this thing really looks like and what I believe it can really do for you. And before we do that, I'm going to take a quick sip of my tea here. Okay, so the Dualist Method is about taking back your time and giving it to someone who really knows what they're doing. And who is that someone? That someone is you. And, sometimes when I tell people this, they say, hey, wait, but I don't know what I'm doing with my time. That's the whole reason I'm here to ask you. That's the whole reason, you're coaching me on this, or I'm taking your course. And I say, right, but the idea is once you learn these principles, you will know. So, the future you really does know what you're doing. So the Dualist Method is all about changing the way you work, making sure that you know how to work effectively and productively for you. So, let me know in the chat, is this you? Are you looking to make a change in the way you work? Is there something different you could be doing with your work life? Let me know. And, let's just dive into what this Do Less method is. And first things first, let me tell you that, the reason I came up with this acronym in the first place, you'll see another acronym later in the presentation, is simply because I am someone who has a poor memory. So I need acronyms to help me remember the very frameworks and models that I've created. And so that's the reason. So the Do Less method is made up of 6 key steps. And the first step in this process is all about deciding, because ultimately deciding what is important to you is the first and most important thing you need to do before you can even think about organizing your time well or becoming more productive. So there are a few key ways to make decisions. I want to touch on a few of these and know that, in general, the Do Less method, this type of training, when I give to people, it can take 2 days. So we're doing a very brief overview right now for an hour, just to give you a sense of what this looks like. So one of the great ways you can decide is by coming up with a word of the year. And this idea is that each and every year you should choose a word to represent the year ahead of you. I first heard about this idea maybe about 8 years ago. It may or may not have been in one of Gretchen Rubin's books. I do not thoroughly remember, and I need to figure it out one of these days. But essentially the idea behind a word of the year is that you choose one word to really represent the year, or, it could be a season, or it could be a period of years that you have ahead of you. So one word, that hopes to embody everything you want to be and think and feel in the year ahead. So, here are some great words that many of my blog readers have come up with over the years, and some of my own as well. The first time I did this exercise, my word of the year was rest. And it was very immediately clear to me what my word of the year was going to be after I read about this concept, because I knew that I needed to take a step back in my life. I knew I needed to rest. And, the way this helped me throughout the course of the year, we'll mention goal setting later in the presentation, but after I had my word of the year, which that year was rest, I then went into my annual goal setting process. But most importantly, I could just remember that there was this one word that was sort of bringing together all the goals within my year and all the ideas I had about who I wanted to do and be and feel that year. And so, I remember one day I had flown to speak at a conference, and I had finished my speech and I'd come back to my hotel room, and there was a dinner that night I wanted to go to. I wanted to meet some great people, and it was a, quote unquote opportunity. I think the word opportunity should probably always be in quotes, simply because there's always a cost to those opportunities, right? And the cost this time to me was that I felt exhausted. I just wanted to lay in bed and maybe watch some Real Housewives or just go to bed early, right? I just needed to rest. So I said, what do I do? Do I go out? Do I take advantage of this opportunity? Or, do I stay in? And I said, Claire, remember your word of the year is rest. It's time to rest. And I did. So a couple other words of the year: ban busy with a hashtag. I love hashtags. That was my word of the year in 2015. In 2016, my word of the year was work by design. Here are some other words that some blog readers have had over the years: passion, hustle, focus, Sally. Let's say Sally is the name of your child, and you want to make sure that, this year is really focused on her, for example. Slow, intention, meaning. These are all great words of the year. Now, another key way to work on making good decisions about, what matters and what doesn't in your life is to set SMART goals. The SMART goal framework is something developed by a guy named Paul Allen. And essentially what it is it's all about setting goals that are SMART: specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and timely. And we don't have much time to go into these right now, but suffice it to say, learning how to set SMART goals is really essential. And one of the things I do once I come up with a series of goals and then turn them into SMART goals, making sure they're specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and timely, is I then place my goals into goal categories. I use about 6 goal categories every year. Mine are family, faith, work, personal health, and money. And this allows me to more easily see at a glance that I'm really covering all areas of my life. And so I might, put a couple goals in each area. And this really helps to keep me on track. So we've done a quick overview of what it means to decide within the Do Less method, and now we're really going on to the second part of it, which is all about organizing your life around those decisions. So within organizing, the first key thing you're going to be doing is limiting your work to your best 20%. And so this practice of limiting your work to your best 20% is one of the most important activities that I walk people through in Work by Design School, or when I'm doing coaching with folks. And essentially what it does is it forces you to look at everything you do in your work life and say, is this part of my best 20%? So what does that mean? So there's this thing called the 80-20 rule, or Pareto's principle, that basically says that 80% of the things you do only yield you 20% of the results, which is pretty depressing, right? That is pretty discouraging, makes it sound like we do a lot of stuff that doesn't really move the needle, doesn't really get us very far. But the opposite of that 20% of the work you do yields you 80% of the results in life, is super inspiring, because that means that if you can figure out what those best 20% activities are, you can focus on those things and get 80% of the results and not have to waste all this other time doing stuff that isn't working, right? So this activity that I walk people through is extremely powerful, and it involves basically creating a list of all the things you do on a daily or weekly or quarterly basis, and then assigning them to one of three categories: things only you can do, things someone else could do, you don't have to worry for right now who that someone else is, and things you should stop doing. And I want to give you an overview of what this looks like, just what these three types of categories look like. So what is the thing that only you can do? I spend a lot of time on the road as a speaker. When I am giving a speech somewhere, that is something I am the only person that can do. There isn't someone on my team, there isn't someone I can delegate who can give the speech for me. So that is an example of things that only I can do. Things that someone else can do. I've got a friend, Jeff Goyens, he's an entrepreneur. And, I one time was doing an interview with him, and it was a video interview. And so I could see him in his office, and he had this awesome office. And to be fair, I've got a great office. My husband's an architect. He made us a great home with a very cool office. But Jeff's office had this really cool thing where when the camera's on him, he's sitting at a desk that's, in front of a wall. So instead of having the desk on the side of the room like most of us do, it's sort of in the middle. So he has this cool background behind him. And I was like, oh, that is so well done. How'd you do that? And he was like, well, I definitely didn't do it. This is not one of my core strengths. I found someone who was good at this. I gave her the keys to my office, and I said, make it great by the time I get back on Monday. And that's what she did. And so this is an example of identifying, something that maybe you are not good at. Maybe, it's interior design or decorating your office. Maybe it's cleaning your office. Maybe it's bookkeeping. Going through the process of seeing if there are things in your regular work life that someone else could be doing. And I'm going to guarantee you there are some things in there. And then this final category is things you should stop doing. And this is probably my favorite image of the entire presentation. This is some extremely crappy office room. Look at all those chairs. There's no windows. There's some sort of green thing on the wall to make you feel like you're not in a windowless office space. And ultimately, this to me just represents the time suck that is most meetings, right? Obviously, we need meetings to some extent to do the work we do, but a lot of those meetings aren't necessary. And so I think, a lot of times when people go through this process, they see quickly that one of the things they should stop doing is some of those meetings, right? Taking some of those regular meetings off their calendar and making a change in their life so that they can free up more time and space. So this is an activity that is really powerful, and it really transforms what you can do with your days. When you understand what those best 20% activities are, when you understand those activities in your work life that are really moving the needle, then you can try your hardest to really double down on those activities. And that's really what this exercise is about. That was just a brief overview, but I hope that overview at least gets you inspired to start thinking about doing that kind of an activity in your own life. So the next step in the do less method, we've just looked at limiting what you do to your best 20%. Now we're going to look at editing down the time you spend on those activities. So editing down the time you spend on those mostly best 20% activities, right? And so the key way you're going to start this process is by tracking your time. And there are a few different ways to do this. A notebook or Excel spreadsheet is sort of the traditional way. You're going to try to track your time for a week, hopefully 2 weeks, but at least 1 week in 15-minute increments. It really won't take more than 5 minutes a day. You can do it on a piece of paper, do it on your computer, wherever it may be, because this is going to give you incredible insight into how you're actually spending your time. Many of us think we know how we're spending our time, but the reality is how we are actually spending our time is often very, very different. This is sort of the manual process. There is a great tool you can use that can help you do this automatically. It's called Rescue Time. There's a free version, but I recommend the pro version. It's maybe $60 a year. Basically, Rescue Time is an application you download onto your computer, and it runs in the background while you're doing everything you do in a normal day on your computer. And so you can pull it up at any point during the day, or it'll send you a report at the end of the week, and it'll show you exactly where you spent your time. You spent an hour and 31 minutes in Gmail this morning, and 47 minutes on it was in this one email. You spent 2 hours on Skype today. It gives you a great breakdown. And in that pro version, which is what I recommend, it also prompts you to input your offline activities. So this is a great tool to help you in the time tracking process, because time tracking is essential to understanding where you spend your time and thus to changing how you spend it. And a final sort of other tool to use for your phone this is for iOS, it's called Moment. And it doesn't track with as much granularity, but it really does a good job of at the very least, reminding you, hey, you spent 90 minutes on your phone today. Because one of the things I find when I work with folks is they don't count the phone time as work time. And a lot of the phone work that people do these days is work time, right? Especially if you've got your work email on your phone. So the idea behind this concept of editing down the time you spend is ultimately that once you know how much time you spend on different activities, you can then choose an activity and go after that one activity first. Start with one activity and really reduce the time you give yourself to do that. And then over time, you will organically be spending less time on it. So a great place to start, I tell people, is email. The reality is that, there are different studies, but for the most part, we spend around 40% of our work week on email. So maybe around 16 hours a week on email, right? So you could maybe use Rescue Time. You could see that this was the reality. And then what you could do is you could say, okay, next week, I'm going to reduce that number by 10%. I'm going to spend an hour and a half less on email next week, and do that for a week. And then over time, slowly keep chipping away at it. You're reducing the time you spend on email by placing an external barrier until it becomes an organic habit. And, I believe that most people should definitely never be spending more than 10 hours a week on email, but can get it down to around 5 very effectively. So that's an overview of what it means to really edit down the time you spend, right? Now I want to look at the fifth step in the do less method, which is streamlining the work you do. And streamlining is all about using a bunch of different tools and tips and tricks to implement some of these strategies. And so one of my favorite tricks that you can call it is this idea of developing a morning routine. For me, a morning routine has been something that is really essential to helping me start my day off well, but more importantly, help me start my work day off well. And I say work day because especially now in this season of my life, this is really what a morning routine is. It isn't something that I do right when I wake up. I'm a mom of 3 kids, 3 and under, so it's not realistic for me right now for, me spending time in silence and quiet being the very first thing. But it is realistic that doing a morning routine can be the thing I do first thing at the office. So I'd love to know, do you have a morning routine? Let me know if you do. I'm seeing yes and yeses. Some people do. I mean, morning routines don't have to be super developed. And we're going to talk a little bit about what my morning routine is. But really, the important thing is just a morning routine is a way to get your day started positively. So I want to talk a little bit about what my morning routine is in hopes that it can give you some inspiration for what a morning routine it can be. And, I mentioned earlier this whole idea of acronyms. I love acronyms. And my morning routine is also an acronym. It's called, I call it the present principle, and the acronym is present. And the idea behind this is that, 6 years ago or something when I started doing it, I knew there were a series of things I was doing every morning. And so I would write down the first letter of each of those things to remind myself to do it. And it was this jumbled mass of, R, S, T, N, P letters. And I said, hey, why don't I make this into a real word? And so I did, and the word was present, and the word was perfect for the feeling that I wanted my morning routine to give me as well. So the first step in my morning routine is praying or pausing. This is really all about just taking a step back and saying, what can I do to clear my mind right now and just get me centered? Then the next step is really reading. I typically am reading something that is sort of spiritual, and I'm reading something that is sort of business-based. I'm getting some good reading in the morning, maybe about 10 minutes of that. And then I go in, I just skipped over something. And then I go into expressing. And expressing is about journaling for me. I've recently started this practice of the morning pages, which is something by Julia Cameron, this famous author who wrote a book called The Artist's Way a couple decades ago. And she has this idea of morning pages where right upon waking, you really tap into your creativity by writing the first thing you do upon waking, because it gets out some of those subconscious thoughts you had while you were sleeping and this sort of thing. And I, again, don't do this first thing because it's just not, that doesn't work for me in my season of life, but I do it as part of my morning routine when I get to the office and I start my day. And I find that this moment of expression, of saying all the things I'm worried about and nervous about and thinking about and ruminating on, is really important. And then the next step for me is scheduling. It's going in and looking at my schedule for the day, putting things in their place, and creating, a plan for what I'm going to be doing. And the next few steps in my morning routine do not happen in the morning for me anymore, again, because of my season of life. But, exercising is something that happens every day. And then nourishing myself with something that I love to do. Maybe it's reading on the hammock like I did this morning, or, maybe it's going on a long walk, not for exercise, just for fun. Maybe it's, talking to a friend or family member on the phone, whatever it may be. Doing something for you and remembering to invest in you is super important. And then at the end of the day, I really go back and I track and I say, how did I do with my morning routine today? What can I do to do better tomorrow? And, how can I stay motivated to make this a powerful, positive part of my days? So we've, looked at almost everything in the Dualist Method, but there's one final step, and it's all about stopping. And, it may seem funny to think of stopping as a key aspect of a productivity practice, but it is absolutely true. And there are a number of ways to create digital or work stops in your life. I, for example, spend the weekend, I don't open my computer from Friday morning till Monday morning, from Friday night until Monday morning, and I typically spend one day of the weekend off my phone as well. So there are a number of ways to build in these different types of stops. But I think one great way is this idea of taking a weekend off and really taking your weekends and doing something good with them. And this concept, the one that I teach, comes originally from Laura Vanderkam. I kind of tweaked her concept. She wrote this book, What the Most Successful People Do on the Weekends. And she has this idea that, to have a great weekend, you need to really brainstorm anchor activities. You need to create your weekend and build your weekend around anchor activities. And so she suggests 3 to 5 anchor activities. And, for me, what I think is important in a weekend, the emotions I want to get out of a weekend, I want to feel rested. I want to have some personal time, and I want to have some time with family and friends. So what I do is I combine those feelings, the way I want to feel, with this idea of anchor activities. And so, for example, I might come up with 3 anchor activities for my upcoming weekend. I might want to go on a long run. I could call that my personal time activity. I might want to get a massage. I could call that my rest activity. and I might want to plan a barbecue with the neighbors, right? And that would maybe be my family friend activity. So this would be an easy way to do a really simple weekend based on 3 anchor activities. And, choosing 3 to 5 is about right. And basically the idea is you go into the weekend with a plan. You do these activities that I'll check one of those 3 how do I want to feel boxes, and then you come out of the weekend restored and refreshed and renewed and ready to get back to work. So this is a practice I highly recommend. So, we've gone through an overview of what the Dualist Method is, and I think it's time to really step back and kind of ask, why did you show up today? What were you hoping to get out of this presentation? And really, why are you here? Because I am hoping and believing that a lot of you are here because you really want to change the way you work. And if that is the case, then you are definitely in the right place, because this message is all about doing that. It's all about finding a way for you to be more fulfilled in your work and have more margin in your lives, essentially. I think, maybe you showed up today because you're tired of trying everything you find in books, articles, and internet rabbit holes without success. Is that you? Maybe you long to move the needle. You want more time in your day to do your best work and live your best life once and for all. And maybe, deep down, there is a better way. You're just not quite sure where it is lurking. And, I'm here to tell you that I have created something that I think might fit you and might fit your needs if this is the type of thing you are looking for. And it is called Work by Design School. I mentioned it earlier. And Work by Design School is really my signature online program that teaches people intentional productivity, purposeful productivity, and what it means to design a work life that works for you. So no longer to be working by default, but to be working by design. And Work by Design School, it's an online course, an on-demand course. I run it a few times a year. I open it, I should say, a few times a year. It's currently open right now for just another 24 hours. And I've got this amazing 50% off coupon code for folks who are on the webinar today to use if you purchase within an hour of this webinar ending. So let me walk through what Work by Design School looks like. It's essentially an online course. There's over 45 video lessons, and it's broken down into 3 modules. The first module is all about establishing your why. And so in Unit 1, we look at what is your why. We look at setting intentions and finding a word of the year to guide you, which is something we touched on today. In Unit 2, we look at mastering the art of goal setting, reaching SMART goals, the power of goal categories, something we touched on today, and knowing when to change a goal. Now, Module 2, we move on. In Module 2, we're talking about maximizing your productivity to maximize your profits. Because again, Work by Design School is ideal for people who have some control over their time and some control over their income, right? So you want to see how you can maximize your productivity to also maximize your profits. And we do that first in Unit 3. In Unit 3, we'll look at the number 1 mistake we make when it comes to money and productivity. And why, if you do this wrong, you'll say goodbye, Felicia, to financial success. Goodbye, Felicia is an internet meme. For those who are wondering, what the heck? My name is not Felicia. And Unit 4, we look at why limiting what you do is key to your profits. We look at the key hiring principle that changes your view of money, how to track your time, something we touched on, how to calculate the value of your time. This is so important. This is such a key exercise that totally transformed the way I do my work. And we look at the one thing never to do when calculating your time's value, which is super important to remember. In Unit 5, we talk about how to use the 80-20 rule to reduce your work hours. So this is one of the most powerful exercises in all of Work by Design School. It's something we touched on super briefly today. Then we look at the importance of understanding high impact work, low impact work, high revenue work, and low revenue work. That maybe sounds like a mouthful, but honestly, as soon as you understand it, it becomes second nature, and it becomes something that you recall on a daily basis as you're doing different activities in your work life. And we look at the proven method for limiting your work to your best 20%. And then we move on to Module 3, and Module 3 is all about putting into practice everything we've learned and really working by design. In Unit 6, we talk about the secret to focus. We talk about decision fatigue and making it work in your favor. We look at understanding how sleep leads to great performance. We talk about the importance of a morning routine and how to build one, something we touched on today. And we also talk about the power of an evening routine. Then Unit 7 is a doozy. Unit 7, there's a ton of content inside. In Unit 7, we look at determining your biological prime time, where working at this hour will increase your productivity 2 to 100 times. So this is a very exciting activity, something that I recommend everyone look into. Even if you don't do work by design school, you can probably find some articles on the internet, maybe some written by me, about how to do a little bit of thinking about what biological prime time is, because even if you don't have work by design school and can't do the activity, if you start thinking about it, it'll help jumpstarting your understanding. In Unit 7, we're also going to look at murdering the to-do list you have now and making this one instead. We'll look at the art of the daily brain dump and why you need a master to-do list. We'll look at the secret behind productive multitasking and how and why to batch your work. If you're not batching your work, you've got to start doing it now. And I'll make sure you do in Work by Design School. We'll look in Unit 7 also at how to reduce your time on email, how to handle meetings and the art of meeting elimination and maximizing meetings, and how to calendar your life and why using this key scheduling principle will make calendars work for you once and for all. Now we'll move on to Unit 8. In Unit 8, we'll look at understanding Parkinson's law and how to use it in your favor. We'll look at how to shrink your work hours no matter what you do. We'll look at the power of taking back your time even if you're an employee. We'll look at the 2 things that you need to learn to say no, and we'll explore why all successful people still do things they don't want to do, which is true. You know, when you get to a certain level of success, it doesn't mean that you never take out the garbage or never deal with a customer service representative about your Verizon bill. And there are some good reasons for this, and we'll look at what those good reasons are. And in Unit 9, we'll explore why play makes you more productive. We'll talk about how to reclaim your weekends. And we will explore this idea of mastering the art of the digital detox. In Unit 10, we will discuss what your time off is worth to you. And then we will see what it means that moderation is really an implementation. So this is really the overview of Work by Design School. You know, Work by Design School is a system of productivity that works for you. It is a process that will give you confidence that you are in control of your days. It will give you time and margin in your life, and it will also give you greater profits in your business. I'm super confident about this product. You know, we've had hundreds of people go through it in the last year since I opened it. And today on the webinar, we'll be doing this 50% off discount, and we'll be doing these fast action bonuses. I'm going to share what these are. This is if you sign up within an hour of the webinar ending. So the first one is The Power of Working by Design. This is a 40-page ebook. And I'll walk you through the overview of what it means kind of intellectually to work by design, theoretically, intellectually. Fast action bonus number 2 is a 79, I think, page ebook called The Dualist Method. It'll look through some of the things we talked about today. Fast action bonus number 3 is really fun. It's a productivity lifeline. Someone on my team came up with this. Basically what it is, you know, I'll give you a number to call. You'll call me and leave an up to 5-minute voice message telling me your biggest productivity issue today. And then I will shoot you back and leave a message back to you. And, you know, there aren't a lot of opportunities for coaching stuff with me. So this is a great way to do a little bit of that and to get it just as a bonus by signing up today. So, you know, the big question is, are you ready? Let me know in the chat, are you ready? And then, of course, you know, one of your questions I know that people are going to have is sort of, what's your investment? What is your investment? And before I start sharing what your investment is, I want to say that there's a crazy 50% off coupon code today. It's called half off WBD. It's just for the webinar. It's only going to work if you sign up within an hour of this webinar ending. And so this coupon code is going to give you 50% off of the prices I'm going to share with you now. So we've got 3 levels of Work by Design School: VIP, Elite, and Pro. And they basically differ depending on how much one-on-one coaching interaction you want. So we're going to start with Pro. You know, the original price is 6 payments of $77. That's going to be half off, right? So it's going to be 6 payments of, what is that going to be, $37. And Pro is going to give you lifetime access to the full Work by Design system. You'll get 3 teaching modules and 45 video lessons. You'll get audio downloads and materials for each lesson. You also get the 185-page Work by Design School workbook. This isn't some flimsy ebook. This is a big workbook. You get access to the members-only private Facebook group. You get 5 bonus implementation videos and 5 bonus Q&A videos. And again, that's 6 payments of $77 or 1 payment of $387. Oh, but wait, that's all half off. So half off of all those prices. And Elite, you're going to get everything that is in Work by Design Pro, plus you'll get 5 private coaching calls, group coaching calls with me. And then you get lifetime access to the Work by Design Summit. That was that amazing summit I ran last year. There's more than 45 video interviews in there, and there's a ton of great bonuses. And so Elite is 6 installment payment plan of not 167, half of 167, right? So 6 payments of $83, awesome. And then there's VIP, and VIP is going to give you everything Elite gave you, but it's also going to give you unlimited coaching with me for 30 days via a phone app called Voxer. It's going to give you a one-on-one personalized productivity review from me. It's going to give you a one-on-one personalized Q&A implementation session with me and unlimited email coaching access for 90 days. So VIP is really for if you want that one-on-one support in making this big change in your life. And so, if you are listening today and you're thinking, hey, this sounds like it might be for me, then go to workbydesignschool.net/enroll and get in. It is not workbydesignschool.com. I am very clear on that because I am so upset about that. I hate not getting the .com names. I hate having to settle for .net or .info. And again, you 50% off code, half off WBD. And I just want to be really clear. When you go to that page, you're going to find the level of Work by Design School you want to sign up for. You're going to click, Pro, let's say. You'll get to this page. You'll have to fill in your first name, your last name, all your names, your address. This will be the last step. Then you will get an email. The email will allow you to log into the members area, and you will be able to go at your own pace to complete this course. Depending on what coaching level you have, there's some live coaching calls and such, but it is a course you can complete at your own pace. And there's this awesome 30-day money-back guarantee. This isn't one of those awkward money-back guarantees where you're going to have to, talk to me personally and tell me why you want your money back. You'll just write us an email and say, hey, I want my money back. And if it's within 30 days, we'll say, hey, that's awesome. So easy peasy 30-day money-back guarantee. If you want Work by Design School today, to review, you're going to get instant access at the 50% off price. You get the fast action bonus, the first ebook, Power of Working by Design. You get the second fast action bonus, the Dualist Method. Then you'll get the third fast action bonus, the Productivity Lifeline. And that's all if you enroll today in the next hour. If you need any help ordering, shoot us an email, support@clairediazortiz.com. And, back to you, I think it's important here to, be clear that Work by Design School is one option, but it is my job to sort of tell you about it. It is your job to decide if it is right for you. And it has changed the lives of many, and people have had amazing things to say about the way it has transformed the way they do their work. But the decision is really, it's yours. It is up to you. What do you want to do now? And I think if you're in a place where you're saying, I don't know where to start, I would, say, I understand that feeling of maybe being overwhelmed, of maybe being close to burnout. I understand that fear, and I remember it well, and I empathize with you. I'm here with you. I also understand if you have that feeling that busy is the new norm, because that was what I felt for so long. And I would just encourage you to think, some of that is your doubt talking, your doubt saying, your doubt telling you that you can't make a change, because in reality, we all can make changes in our lives any day. And if you feel overwhelmed and that busy is as busy does, and that your life is busier than anyone could ever imagine, I just want to encourage you that there are ways to change. And any small step you can make is a huge achievement. And the same thing if you're feeling this is how it will always be, don't give in to that. That's inertia. I want you to really instead find that light, find the light, find that shiny thing that can tell you, hey, you can make a difference. So the question now is, are you ready to invest in you, whether it's Work by Design School or something else? Are you ready to invest? Are you ready to level up your success, to change the way you work, to ultimately change the way you live? And are you ready to do it? That's kind of my question for you. If you're not, let me know what's holding you back. I'd love to kind of chat with you about it. Again, Work by Design School is just one option. I think it's a fantastic option, but more than anything today, I hope that you have come away with some tools and ideas for what you can do to start implementing some productivity practices in your life to get your life back under control. This is probably the most important slide in the whole presentation. Oh, hey, you rock, because you do. And the funny thing about this was that you rock was like my password on pretty much all my accounts about 12 years ago. So you can go, hack me in the past, essentially. So we're going to jump into a Q&A, and the fast action bonuses and such are going to end when, we're not going to say when the Q&A ends, but I would put them up for an hour, actually. So, you can get in with that 50% off code using half off WBD. I'm going to look at some of the questions that Sally sent me some of these questions, so we can go through some of your questions from today. Okay, let's look at some. So one question is, implementing productivity strategies is a challenge. When kids ask for attention, when does protecting the boundary win, and when does being available trump? So this is a great question. I think this is something that is very relevant to my own life. I've got 3 little kids right now. And so for me, learning how to really set some work and family boundaries was super important. And, what I do these days is essentially I try to, be mom when I'm mom, and I try to work when I'm working. And, I mentioned earlier about, my home office. My husband's an architect. He built our home. When he built our home, I said, it's super important to me to have an office in the house. I don't like those offices that are outside houses. I want my office in the house. And this was like a big deal. I had no kids at the time, and now I feel like my home office is basically a train station, So these days I've realized that I get far more done by simply leaving my office, leaving my house, for a 6-hour period, going to my office outside the home, doing my work, and then coming back. And so for me, that division of space has been super important, and that is added to my ability to say, hey, I'm mom when I'm mom, and working when I'm working. I think this also relates to this thing. There are a lot of sort of productivity gurus out there who tell you, wake up at 4 a.m. and do your deep work for 4 hours. And the reality is that's just not realistic for most of us. We may be in many different seasons of life, but most of us have a lot of competing priorities that make that kind of advice not work. And so I think that's why, I felt when I was sort of in the pit of my overwhelm that I needed a system like the one I ended up building that allowed for really intentional productivity and productivity that worked with people's lives. Okay, so I'm hearing a lot. Okay, so Sally's basically saying the chat box is completely messed up. So I'm really sorry about that. It looks like there's like a lot of complaints that the chat box isn't working. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go with these questions that she has that came through from earlier, and I'm really sorry about that. Yeah, the internet has just not been the internet gods have not been in my favor today. Okay, someone's asking, what if you work virtually and are asked to do things without being asked about your own schedule or own deadlines? And I think this is really important. Whether you're an employee or you're an entrepreneur, but you are probably going to work with other people, right? You're going to work on teams, on projects, you're going to work with clients. And it's really important in this process to learn about batching work, because batching work is one of the best things you can do to become more productive. So doing similar work at similar times. So, maybe Tuesdays is your day for external meetings. So on Tuesdays, you have a bunch of meetings. Maybe Thursdays is your day for memo writing, things like that, right? So batching your work. So I want to really remind you that I first started to develop the concepts of work by design, while I was still an employee. So it is possible to batch your work and to batch things like meetings, even as an employee, when maybe you have a boss or you have other people with different schedules. And basically what you do, is you take a look at your calendar, look at it as it is now, look at all those regular meetings and just say, hey, where are these naturally grouping as they are, right? Maybe you see that you've got 3 days of the week now that typically have meetings. Okay, so then you're gonna do some fine tuning. You're gonna ask to switch some of those meetings so that you can maybe bulk them into 2 days, say. And that's a great first step to start batching work, even when you are working with other people or have external pressures on your time. And so then that means, if you've decided, okay, Tuesday and Wednesday are your meeting days, and someone asks you for a meeting on a Friday, you then immediately push back and ask for Tuesday or Wednesday. And you don't, have to be incredibly inflexible, but, you do need to create boundaries with everyone that you work with if you want to make true productivity, purposeful productivity work for you. How much time do you spend on your morning routine? I spend about 20 minutes on my morning routine these days. I remember listening to a podcast earlier this year where some guy was talking about spending 90 minutes on his morning routine. And I was like, bravo to you. That is awesome. I don't have the time to do that. But I can just imagine how much sort of peace and smarts he's getting from such an awesomely long morning routine. But I spend about 20 minutes on my morning routine now, and it's a good chance to kind of center me, bring me to baseline, and jumpstart my day well. Okay, how do you limit or ask clients or others to respect your time? This is a very good question. Again, this sort of gets back to what we were talking about earlier with the idea of when you have people are asking you to do meetings or scheduling things without asking you. I mean, the big thing here is that if you want to make a big change in your work, you are going to have to create some hard boundaries. And that doesn't mean you're inflexible, but it does mean that you are creating boundaries in your life. And those boundaries are going to be for other people, and they're going to be for you. I mean, one of the biggest first boundaries I had to create in my life when I made these changes a handful of years ago was taking email off my phone, right? And maybe that doesn't sound like a boundary. Maybe that just sounds like insanity, but it's a hard boundary. It means that I don't have email on my phone, right? So I can't deal with your immediate issue if I'm not in the hours when I am at my desk and, checking email twice a day as I typically do, right? So creating boundaries in your life is extremely essential. And, one of the things I work with lots of entrepreneurs and small business owners, and I hear the same thing over and over, and they say, when I became an entrepreneur or a small business owner, I used to be an employee and I thought, I would have so much more time because now I'm in control of my time. But in reality, I just wasted my time like crazy in the beginning because I didn't have constraints. And that's really the truth. So a lot of this idea of creating boundaries is creating constraints for yourself so that you can develop routines and habits that help you do better work. So yeah, that's the overview of that, I would say. So look, I want to jump off this. I respect your time. I want to try to keep it to this hour and 15-minute max. So I'm Claire. This is Work by Design School. Maybe this is for you. Maybe it's not. It's my job to tell you about it. It's your job to decide. If it's for you, this is the 50% off code. This code will not be good in an hour. It will be good in 59 minutes, but not in an hour. And, this code is good for all levels of Work by Design School. So thank you for being here. You rock. And I'm so, so grateful for your time, guys. Have a fantastic day.